Do you remember those stuffy old books you used to read in high school? The ones that taught you messages about war, love, class struggles, and many other subjects. Have you ever sat and wondered why you had to read those books in high school? All the books in the world, and yet every kid in America has read The Scarlet Letter, The Great Gatsby, Pride and Prejudice, and many others. The reason you had to read these texts is because of the American literary canon. What is the literary canon? The literary canon refers to those texts generally thought of as important or valuable to a culture. By extension, the term canon has come to refer to the works that are accepted as significant within any field of study. This definition comes from the Encyclopedia of American Studies. So what makes a book count as canon? What usually decides if something ends up in the literary canon is the cultural context, production, circulation, and consumption. The curriculum is a big part of the canon. According to the Encyclopedia of American Studies, quote, curriculum and canon are not equivalent, although they do reflect one another. Literary and historical canons are in part shaped by the myriad decisions about course content made by teachers, as well as by the decisions of critics about what texts and authors to consider, end quote. Diversity in canon, in literature canon, has been argued for many years, but why is it a big deal? Pamela Mason, director of the Language and Literary Program at Harvard Graduate School of Education, says, quote, the canon has long been revered in public education as representing the depth and breadth of our national common experience, end quote. The problem with using the literary canon as a representation of our national experience is that America does not have one defined experience. In fact, the books used in the canon are most likely to be written by white, cis male heterosexual men, and most likely dead. It leads to a limited extension of American culture. Even though it seems that diversity in the literary canon is crucial in our education, there are still arguments on whether diversifying the canon is important. It became a heated debate in the culture wars of the 1980s and is still relevant today. There are two sides when it comes to diversifying the literary canon, and they both make relevant claims to their sides. Those who say yes to diversity often argue that the canon is not an accurate representation of American culture, that students react well to diversity, and that the canon should change along with the times. One major concern that those who want diversity in the canon argue that these books are considered classics and some of the best literature ever. It also helps for the curriculum to have a standard set of books that all high school students can remember, but the canon does not provide for such a diverse country. It does not cover all American literature or perspectives, leading to an extremely homogeneous education for students. Kim Koch, an English teacher at Central Bucks High School in Philadelphia, has found that students react better to a reading list that includes greater diversity. She claimed that, quote, when she introduced African American literature into her senior English class, students of color reacted positively. One student explained to Koch that the books helped the students understand that she comes from a different experience than they do, end quote. It's why she calls for a greater diverse range of characters, especially characters of color. Another argument made, especially around the 1980s culture war, was that American culture changes all the time. They believed that the literary canon should be flexible in what should be taught. Canon should evolve along with the rest of the culture. The argument against diversifying the literary canon usually stems from the fear of classics being erased, white history being erased, and the struggle that comes with changing the curriculum. Anne Lake Prescott, a senior scholar and professor emerita of English, told the university's newspaper at Barnard College, quote, after years of experience, I would say too bad. In order to understand later literature, you need to have read some Shakespeare, Milton, Tennyson. This is good background for an English major. The brutal part of my mind says if you don't like it, don't major in English. Many professors would feel that if you don't get the basics of the British literature supplemented by American literature, you simply can't understand some of the moderns, end quote. Many believe that adding new diverse topics would erase the integrity of these classics. Another argument stems from a political standpoint. Viet Nguyen, Errol Arnold Chair of English and a professor of English American Studies and Ethnicity and Comparative Literature, claims that many think that changing the literary canon will erase white history in general, that they will feel forgotten in favor of the minorities of America. And finally, many teachers actually side with the idea of diversifying their curriculum, but they're saying it's harder than it seems. With their textbooks, the courses that they are supposed to teach, and the limited amount of time to teach it, it seems that many teachers struggle to add new books in. In the end, it's still an ongoing argument, but the facts cannot deny that many students want to change in the books that they read. As many Americans call for more diversity in media, workforces, and role models, the curriculum is also being challenged to get with the times.